Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to today's episode of the TC Exchange podcast. I am going to be honest, today's episode is a challenging one. It's a challenging one because it is something that I personally struggle with. And I wanted to be vulnerable with you and share my feelings about this particular topic. And that topic is imposter syndrome. Now, I think that at this point, everybody is familiar with the term imposter syndrome. In fact, recently on one of my Facebook pages, I had one of my members reach out and say, "Hey, Amity, I'm struggling a little bit with imposter syndrome. Can you help me and give me some ideas on how to navigate through imposter syndrome?" And at the time, I answered the question, I gave a couple of tips, but I didn't put too much commitment into it. And that really came from my own place of imposter syndrome, because sometimes I wonder whether I'm even the right person to give advice or give guidance. Even though I'm a coach, even though I have this podcast, even though I have a successful business, there are still moments where all of us, no matter how successful we are going to question what it is that we're doing, who we are as a business owner, who we are as a transaction coordinator, who we are as a leader, and then even into our personal lives, who we are as a wife, a mother, a friend, a husband, a partner. So imposter syndrome, for real, for real. Before we get too far into it, I want to talk a little bit about what imposter syndrome is. Now, there are a couple of different definitions out there, and there was one that Brene Brown, she said this. She was doing an interview with a couple of women, and this is back in October of 2021, I believe, when this episode aired. And this was from her Dare to Lead podcast. And she was interviewing these two women that had written an article for the Harvard Business Review on imposter syndrome. And the title of the article was "Stop Telling Women That They Have Imposter Syndrome." And it was a great article. I do recommend you read it, listen to the podcast. One of the things that I took out of that was what Brene Brown's definition of imposter syndrome was. And it is not having an internal sense of your own success, despite having accolades and accomplishments or anything that outsiders would see as successful, and that internally you just don't believe it or you just can't see it. And man, that's me. I really do struggle with this. Another definition that I came across was from a therapist whose name I cannot recall. I'm so upset I cannot find her information now. But what she said was that imposter syndrome comes to high achieving people who fear being exposed as a fraud. And usually those people have impressive accomplishments. But despite their accomplishments, their self-limiting beliefs prevent them from feeling successful. And that was like a punch in the gut for me also. Because I personally, being vulnerable, I walk around this earth a lot of times thinking, I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Why is anybody going to listen to what I'm saying? What if somebody doesn't agree with me? What if someone thinks that what I say is BS? And the truth is that's not the case. I have enough experience and success in my life, in my business, that I have a platform and I have a voice and I have experiences that bring value. And so that's what we're here about today, and why I wanted to confess my feelings of the imposter syndrome thing. So here's a couple of things too about how to tell if you have potentially imposter syndrome. And this can help you figure out what to do. The first thing is having chronic feelings of self-doubt. You're second guessing your decisions. You think that your success is purely based on luck, that you were in the right place at the right time. And you dismiss the talents and the successes and the experiences that you bring to the table. Does that sound like you? People who experience imposter syndrome also tend to have perfectionistic tendencies. So this is a combination of both a fear of failure and the chronic feeling of inadequacies that then drive us into over preparing. Like, we have got it down. We're going to sit down and we are going to work out all of those hours and we're going to bust it out and we are going to obsess over the details. We're going to double check. We're going to do it over. And we are only as good as our last accomplishment. And we're never going to be good enough. And we live in fear that our colleagues will find out that we have no idea what we're doing. Whoa. So, you can feel that kind of thing on and off, and it can be work or personal. It doesn't have to be just specifically with work. It doesn't have to be specifically with your business. It can be in your personal life. You can feel like that about how you show up for your children. You can feel that way about how you show up for your friends, for your partner. It is the belief that everyone else has it figured out and you don't. It's irrational. It doesn't make sense. But there are things that you can do. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Some of the things that you can do. So the first thing I want to talk about is you have to celebrate your successes. You have to recognize and celebrate every single win that you have. Small wins, big wins. You've got to see it. You got a new client. That's a win. You got 5 new clients. That's a win. You had 2 closings this week. That's a win. Whatever it takes. You counseled and coached an employee, a contractor on your team. You learned a new compliance rule that's coming out. That's a win. So when you are sitting down and you're celebrating your successes and you're thinking about your successes, this is where keeping a journal or a diary can be really helpful. And I think that I've talked about this before. I am not a journal person. I am not. I have these big fantasies of how I'm going to have this big, beautiful journal, and I can picture myself sitting in my comfy little chair with my steaming hot cup of tea, and I'm writing away and journaling all of my thoughts and my dreams and my hopes. And all that I ever come up with is, "Dear diary, Jimmy looked at me sideways today," and I feel like such an idiot. So I really, really struggle with journaling. I have gotten through that. I have figured out some other ways, but to get that sort of meditative and self-care effect that journaling does have. It does not have to be Dear Diary, but what you can use your diary for is to log all of the things that happened. You're going to want to go back to those kind of logs, and you can look and see your wins. You can look and see the areas you need to improve on. We had an episode recently about doing your business reviews. Use that log for that, but go back and look at the things you've written down and seek out those wins and recognize those wins for what they are. And that will help you with imposter syndrome. The next thing I think that's important is that you seek support. I believe that at this time there are a ton of group pages on Facebook that are amazing, amazing resources for networking, for support. And one of the things that I really love about them is feeling like I am not alone. You can go on to any of those pages at any time, and you will find somebody who is going through something that you have either already gone through or it's something that you're going through currently, and you can find support. I really love our Facebook groups, and there are some groups on LinkedIn as well that you can connect with. They are really great places to see that you are not alone and that the struggles that you're feeling and the fears that you have about your own worth as a business owner, as a transaction coordinator, are all things that we all are going through, and they're very, very relatable. So check out those groups and seek support and ask the questions. I do suggest that you invest in continually learning. So if you have the opportunity to attend conferences, get into those conferences. If you have an opportunity to attend any masterminds that are put on by the Facebook groups, get in there and learn. These kind of things are going to help you gain more knowledge and more experience so that you can pull from what you've learned and incorporate those in your day-to-day conversations with potential agents, with potential new hires, with the compliance staff. There's a number of places that you can pull that information in. And it can even be things that are teaching you how to get more clients, social media strategies, how to navigate that. A hot topic that we're dealing with today is that we have some major changes coming up in the real estate industry related specifically to compensation and the compensation specifically for buyers agents. That is very much in flux. So get into those masterminds, listen in on those conversations, go to the broker. If you're licensed, get in the conversations in the broker's offices and listen to what's going on. If you're not licensed, find any resource that you can. Go on the NAR websites and take classes that are the free resources that are available. Check out the things that are around there. It will help make you more powerful. Knowledge is power. I also want you to think about setting realistic goals. So instead of creating some big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG. I love the BHAG concept. It's great. Be big and bold, but this is not the time. If you're experiencing imposter syndrome, this is not the time. Or if you have your big, hairy, audacious goal, you take that goal and you break it down into reasonable chunks. And then that way you can look at your goal and you can see the progress that you're making and feel that success from there, that you are making positive steps. Say your big, hairy, audacious goal is to be the #1 transaction coordinating company in the country. Is that big enough? I mean, I think that's pretty dang big, So then what you want to do is you want to know who the #1 person right now, the #1 company right now. Take a look at their business model. Take a look at what they're doing, and then see if that's where you can envision your company going, and then take those things and break them into small goals. Specifically, what type of clients you're taking, what number of clients you have, what number of transactions that you are doing in volume, number of transaction coordinators that work for you, number of transaction coordinators that are employees versus number of transaction coordinators that are contractors. There's a ton of different ways that you can break things in business down into goals that are achievable and measurable and smart. And remember, we've talked about SMART goals before. And I think that having smaller goals will help you feel less overwhelmed. I think that the great big goals, they're fantastic and they're exciting and it feels good to be audacious. But that big, hairy, audacious goal can feel very, very overwhelmed. And it also doesn't necessarily have a path. So when you're talking about that great big goal, those little tiny goals, those are your steps to get you there. I also think finding a mentor in your professional journey is a great way to help you deal with imposter syndrome. So having somebody that you talk to, a coach, mentor, someone that you talk to that can say, hey, but don't forget that this happened and you did this. Don't you remember you did this? Yes, but you did this. Having that person on your side who is going to lift you up and give you guidance on what the next steps are to take and to remind you of what you've done and how far you come, incredibly powerful. And I do also think that it's important that not only do you have a mentor, I think it's super important that you are a mentor. And this is where I think we come back to those online communities and we see the people who are asking the questions. And you see the people that are going through the struggles, and maybe they're the struggles that you went through. And being a mentor for those people means going on to that thread and saying, oh my gosh, I know that that's so frustrating. That happened to me before. This is how I dealt with it. And being generous and graceful with your comments, with your guidance, sharing your experiences. That's incredibly powerful. And it makes you feel good. Doesn't it make you feel good? It sure makes me feel good to give somebody some great advice and to get them back on track when you can see that they are spiraling down a horrible rabbit hole of feeling despair and discontent and confusion and feelings of worthlessness. And you can lift them back up, and that feels really, really good. And then that's good for your imposter syndrome too. I want you to practice self-compassion. I want you to think about giving yourself some grace and remembering that we are all on a journey to success. I think it was a Mel Robbins podcast or episode that I listened to quite a while ago, and it was about having confidence. And she said something along the lines that confidence isn't what you think it is. Confidence is courage. Courage to say and do the thing that you are afraid to do. And that only by practicing courage will you be able to build confidence. And that I thought pretty cool. I want you also to focus on value and not perfection. So don't worry about whether you did it perfect. Don't worry about whether the steps that you took to get there were perfect. Do it messy. But focus on the value. Focus on what you're building, what you're contributing, and think about that. Not how perfect and pretty it is and whether it's wrapped up in a beautiful little bow. Visualize your success is another tip I have for overcoming imposter syndrome. And just sit back and meditate for a minute and think about what it would look like if you weren't afraid and you weren't worried about what someone would say to you if you put yourself out there by publishing that ad or that post on Instagram or Facebook. Visualize yourself being in a room full of real estate agents and walking up to those real estate agents and having real conversations about your business and what you could bring to their business. Visualize that. Visualization is a very, very powerful thing. And taking what you visualized and then move into taking action, that is going to build your confidence, because moving forward, action is going to create momentum. It's going to get easier every single time. Let's just take networking as an example, okay? We all hate networking. I am sure of it. I have learned to appreciate networking. I have learned to love it, but I have so many stories of sitting in the parking lot and saying, I do not want to go in there. I do not want to have small talk. I don't want to introduce myself. I don't want to tell anybody anything about me. Nobody cares about what I do. I don't want to put myself out there. I am afraid. I am nervous. And this feels gross. And then the conversation in my head turned to, okay, I'm going to go in and all I have to do is talk to one person. That's all I have to do. One person. And once I've talked to that one person, then I can leave. And then it got easier. And then the next time I went in, like, okay, I'm going to talk to 3 people today. And then I can leave. And then the more I did it, the more comfortable I got. And the more fun it was to go into groups and to approach it not thinking about myself, but thinking about these other people, and that everybody else that was in that room was feeling probably the same way I was, but I'm going to approach it with a sense of curiosity, and I'm going to ask questions. And then the natural course of the conversation will be that people will ask me questions. And the next thing you know, we've exchanged cards. We've got a meeting for coffee coming up the following week. And then the week after that, I've got a new client. So take action. Just start small, start messy, but just keep going. All right. I thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that you found these tips to be helpful in navigating through imposter syndrome. It is a scary thing. Our limiting beliefs are incredibly powerful things that can hold us back from moving forward and having success. I still deal with my limiting beliefs every single day, but you can get through them. And I think if you follow these tips on knowing that your feelings are valid and that's okay, and that everybody has a feeling of imposter syndrome, and knowing what you're doing, and then you go through the list. Celebrate your success, seek your support, learn something new, be realistic in your goals, talk to your mentor, make sure that you're giving yourself grace, focusing on your value and not on perfection, visualizing your success, and taking action. And you got this, my friend. You're going to kill it. All right. Thanks again so much for tuning in to today's episode of the TC Exchange podcast. I can't wait to get back together with you again next week. Same time, same place. Have a fantastic week, my friends. Bye for now. And that wraps up another episode of the TC Exchange podcast. Thank you so much for joining me and being a part of this incredible journey through the world of transaction coordination. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity to learn, and together, we're setting the compass to true north. If you want to dive deeper into the world of TCs or simply connect with our growing community, follow us on Instagram at TrueNorthTCT. For exclusive content, insights, and engaging discussions, be sure to join our Facebook group, the TC Exchange. And for resources, courses, and a treasure trove of knowledge, check out our website at TrueNorthTransactionServices.com. Keep the conversations going, share your insights, and until next time, keep your compass pointing true north. See you soon.